What is up, all you individuals out there? It's me, full-time anime man, and yes, I am finally back after months of not doing this story. What if Deku was a firewolf? Part 9. Yeah, so it's just for a while I just wasn't really feeling this what if, but then I actually managed to come up with a satisfying ending for the Eerie Saga. And so I just thought, yeah, let's follow through on that and finally get this show on the road. Also, one more thing, I am going to scream and shout at this timeline, so just to give y'all that heads up. Sorry for those who watched a certain episode of Ice Wolf. So, I got nothing else to say. This is What If Deku Was a Firewolf Part 9. Hope you all enjoy. Oh, but one more thing. One of my friends, made this image for me. He does his thing on Twitter. His thing is, yeah, that goes by the name that143104615 on Twitter. Why don't y'all go check him out? He does really great drawings. So, yeah. So, enjoy. Where we officially last left off, Izuku and the rest of his classmates took part in the sports festival. In the racing competition, Izuku, Bakugo, and Shoto were in a three-person draw. The 10 million headband was split between the boys, each of them gaining 3,333,333 points. Izuku teamed up with Yaoyorozu, Uraraka, and Mei Hatsume, while Bakugo had Kirishima, Mina, and the Tape Dude, and Shoto had Kaminari, Ida, and Yuga. And just for the sake of moving the story forward, I am going to have to skip that part of the story just so that we can get to the more juicier parts. I'll probably do that in a separate video. We'll just say for the fact that the boys were able to keep their 3 millionth headband and would have to go up against each other at the same time in the 1v1. And like in the show, Shoji backed out of the battle for he did not remember what happened. Anyway, in the break room, everyone was taking a break. Izuku says, "Well, I could say things went pretty good out there." "You almost set everyone on fire," said Shoto. "Hey, things happen. Besides, nobody got hurt." Bakugo says, "You're lucky that they didn't disqualify you." "Okay, I'll admit, I may have gone a little carried away." Izuku then stands up and says, "Hey, for everyone that I almost caught on fire with, I apologize." Everyone says that it's fine. Shoji then walks up to Izuku and he warns him about Shinso's quirk, telling him not to say anything to him during their fight. Izuku would say, he would thank him for the advice, and soon their break would come to an end, and it was time for Izuku's battle to begin with Shinso. Izuku would be the first, pardon me. As the two step onto their battlefield, Izuku did a few stretches while Shinso just stood there. "Are you boys ready?" asked Midnight. Both of the boys nodded their head yes. "Begin!" Izuku took a few steps forward towards Shinso and he says, "All right, Shinso, can you promise me that you're going to give me a good fight?" Shinso nodded his head and said yes. And Izuku says, "All right, here goes." "Wait a minute." Izuku stops. "Before we begin our fight, I just wanted to say how sorry I am for how I acted the first time we met, and I just wanted to know, can you ever forgive me?" Izuku smiled and he said, "Of course I can." Suddenly, Izuku fell victim to Shinso's mind control. President Mike says, "Uh-oh, folks. It would appear here that Shinso just mind controlled Midoriya. Oh, I wonder how this is going to turn out." Everyone in Class 1A watches as Izuku stands there like a statue, while Shinso walks around in a circle around Izuku, taunting him and saying, "Well, I'm glad that you don't hold grudges." Now, don't get me wrong, I am glad that you forgive me, but this is a competition and I do intend on winning. So, walk off the stage, and when you're out of sight of everyone, hit yourself in the head. Izuku then turns around and he starts walking. Everyone in Class 1A is yelling at him to stop. Uraraka says,
Izuku, stop! Don't give up so easily,
said Yayorozu. Dude, I swear to God, if you cross that line, I will kill you, said Bakugo. Izuku, inside Izuku's head, his wolf speaks to him. Izuku, what are you doing? You have to stop. From right behind him, like the world around him was shrouded in shadows, and the word step off the stage was hovering over his head over and over again. No, I gotta do something. The wolf thinks for a minute, but then the wolf remembered something that Izuku said during the cavalry battle. I forget. You, he remembers him saying, "You got to kick back and have a little fun when you're in these kind of games." Okay, let's have some fun then, said the wolf. The wolf then ran to a black box and he equipped himself with DJ headphones. Right, let's get things started in here. The wolf then pressed a button on the DJ equipment and suddenly lights started flashing around him while music started playing. In reality, Izuku was about to pass the line out of bounds, but he stopped. Shinso says, huh? What the heck? Hey, why did you stop walking? While still having his back turned, Izuku's whole body popped as if he got shocked. Everyone watched in confusion.
What's going on? Ribbit?
A few seconds of silence goes by, and Izuku turned around really fast that Shinso jumped. He scared him. Izuku, while still under Shinso's controls, looks dead back at Shinso. What is going on? For the love of God, said Shinso. Suddenly, Izuku popped his shoulder as he tilted his hips and bobbled his head to the beat. Izuku then jumped into the air, and as he landed back on the ground, he then did the baby freeze position. While his feet are in the air, he then kicked his feet to the beat. While on the ground, he then does the helicopter, otherwise known as the coffee grinder. And while this is going on, his classmates are confused, but mostly amazed that Izuku can dance. Uraraka says,
I didn't know Izuku can dance. Hey, Bakugo, Shoto. Did you know that Izuku can dance?
Both of the boys stare in bewilderment, saying, no, we didn't know he could do that. Mina then said,
Yeah, go Izuku, the dancing wolf boy!
Izuku then does the backspin, and in doing so, he brings the memento up to his. He brings the momentum up to his head. Excuse me. In other words, he does a head spin, spinning at a really fast rate. He then gets on his back and he does the kickstand, standing up. He then does the robot and the moonwalk. While he's doing this, Shinso gets irritated. He started walking towards Izuku and he says, "Stop dancing and get off the stage!" He reached towards Izuku with his hand. What else is he gonna reach with? And the wolf sees this and he says, "Okay, now it's time to do something different. Let's do some do-si-do. Now bow to your partner." Izuku then straightened up and he bowed down, headbutting Shinso. Even though it kind of hurted Shinso, Izuku was still under his control. The wolf then said, "Okay, now swing your partner around and round, round and round, round and round." He just kept on saying that over and over again. Izuku then wrapped his arms around Shinso's arm. I keep on saying Izuku's name over and over again. Shinso tries to free himself from Izuku's grip, but he finds it impossible. Izuku starts skipping in circles around Shinso. While Shinso keeps on trying to free himself from Izuku's grip, he then trips, and now Izuku is dragging him around. Izuku then increases his speed, and even faster than before, and Shinso starts swinging around the air. Everyone starts laughing at what Izuku is doing, and Shinso was getting dizzy, and he yelled, "Let me go!" The wolf inside Izuku's head said, "What a poor choice of words. Let him go." Izuku then lets him go, and he flies off of the battle platform and out of bounds. Midnight declares Izuku the winner, and as Shinso hit the ground, he unintentionally let go of Izuku, setting him free. Izuku, who saw everything, says, "Whoa, that was a close one. Thanks, Wolf." "No problem." He then walked towards Shinso. He offered him his hand, asking him if he was okay. Izuku being a oh wait, Shinso being a bit rattled by the throw, would take Izuku by the hand and stand up. "You know, we may not have had a real fight," said Izuku, "but I gotta say, you got a pretty good quirk there. But trust me when I say this means no irony. You need to do some physical training. I can tell that you rely on your quirk a little too much." Shinso would stand there shaking his head over and over again and says, "Please take me to recovery, woman." Soon after, Class 1A went to Izuku and complimented him on his dancing skills, and Uraraka and Yajirosa would say,
You're taking me dancing when this is all over.
We move on. Everyone had their fights, but before Bakugo went up against Uraraka, Izuku says, "Hey, Bakugo, yeah, what's up? I want you to go all out when you fight Uraraka." "Okay, just curious, why? Isn't she like your girlfriend or something?" "It's just she's been training really hard, and I taught her a few things. And if I were you, I would not go easy on her, because she's a shark, and sharks tend to bite." Bakugo, being a bit confused from what Izuku is saying, said, "Fine, I'll fight her for real. So get ready when she can. So get ready to comfort her when she loses." Bakugo walks off and gets ready for his fight with Uraraka. On the battlefield, the two stared at each other. Midnight said, "Begin." Uraraka unbuttoned her shirt. As she's doing this, Bakugo walks towards her and says, "Your boyfriend told me not to take it easy on you." "That's good. I never intended to, anyway." Uraraka blushes a little bit and says, "Oh."
Oh, did he actually call me his girlfriend?
Without even giving her a response, Bakugo exploded his way towards Uraraka. Uraraka then ducked out of the way, just barely missing Bakugo's tackle. Bakugo stops, turning around. His fingers were smoking. He had a smirk on his face. And said, "You're pretty quick." He then charged up another explosion and charged at Uraraka again while saying, "But that's not gonna help you for long." And Bakugo charges at Uraraka with explosions, only this time Uraraka took the explosion head on. She flipped and flinged backwards a few times, but she still managed to stay into the ring. Uraraka pants for a second, and Bakugo was about to charge once again, only this time Uraraka ran at him. Bakugo smirks, and he uppercuts an explosion at Uraraka, only this time she did a flip, dodging over him, all while uh, all while taking off her jacket, wrapping her jacket around Bakugo's throat, and throwing him over her shoulders, making him land flat on his face. Blood began to spill from Bakugo's nose, and everyone started cheering. But Izuku was the loudest. "Yes, go Uraraka!" Bakugo, now more frustrated, gets up, and Uraraka distanced herself from him, waiting for his next move. Bakugo then wipes the blood off of his face and he says, "That was pretty good, but let's see how you handle this." Now, this is a new move I made for Bakugo. Bakugo then hovered his hands in front of him, them almost touching each other. In between his hands, little bits and pieces of ball of light can be seen. The light then began to grow brighter and brighter with each passing second, and then Bakugo spreaded his hands out as the light continues to amplify in each hand. He then jumped into the air, and then he slammed both of his hands down to the ground, causing an invisible wave of heat and what felt like an intense force. It was like an explosion, only without the fire. Dust started rising off the ground all around Bakugo, and Uraraka could see the wave hurling towards her. There was nothing that she could do. All she could do was embrace for impact and hope for the best. When the impact came, Uraraka felt intense heat on her arms, chest, and legs. Feel the way that the burning sensation feels is like when you open an oven while it's still on and the heat jumps out at your face. That's what it felt like. Uraraka's arms were red and burned. She didn't let that distract her. She then ran towards the angered blonde. This time, she tried to touch him to make him float in midair. But then, Bakugo throws an explosion at Uraraka. Uraraka flips once again, but Bakugo saw that coming. Extending his arm up towards Uraraka, he exploded her while in midair, nearly blowing her out of bounds. But she landed on her feet while sliding backwards. She notices that her shirt was burning and she patted it away a few times. She runs in and tries again, but Bakugo just blows her away every time. This goes on for a few minutes, and one of the people in the crowd shamed Bakugo for not just ending it already. Soon everyone joins in on this man's rage, and Aizawa gets on the mic saying, "For the person who started this, have you ever been in a real fight before? And are you a real pro hero? If so, then just go home and pack up your cape." Bakugo knows that his opponent made it this far in the sports festival because of her skills. He's not seeing her as a girl, he's seeing her as his opponent, and someone that he should take as serious. Their fight continues, and Izuku notices that every time Bakugo blows up the ground, the rocks and debris disappear. Strange. I wonder where they went. Shh. But then, Izuku sees it. Uraraka is making all the debris float just above them. Izuku then gets a bewildered look on his face and he says, "Oh wow, I'll be damned. Let's see where this goes." Uraraka has finally had enough of this. She pants really fast and burned from the explosion. Some of her clothes were burned but still intact. Bakugo stands there, saying, "If you can't stand the heat, then I suggest you just leave, because I'm still gonna go all out." Bakugo then threatens her with explosions flashing from his fingers. Uraraka then reaches behind her back with her right hand. Bakugo then thinks she's going to do something and he gets ready, but she just stands there and puts both of her hands behind her back. Bakugo then says, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" Uraraka then exhales and says, "You know, you're right, Bakugo. I can't beat you. Heck, I can't even get close enough to you. You're both a long-range and a close-range fighter. Yet I have to be close to you to use my quirk." And so, without even Bakugo knowing, she then touched all 10 of her fingertips together, deactivating her quirk. Without even looking up, the rocks and debris started falling from the sky towards Bakugo. One of the small rocks hit Bakugo on the head. He looked up and saw the debris inches away from hitting him. Bakugo had no time to react. He tried to explode the rocks, but he was unsuccessful in doing so. All the rocks landed on top of Bakugo. When it finished, Bakugo was buried underneath the rocks. No, nothing moved, and it was quiet. Uraraka smiles and Midnight declares Uraraka the winner of this round. Uraraka started cheering, saying, I did it! I did it! While jumping in the air. All of a sudden, her celebration was interrupted when the pile of rocks started shaking. Uraraka turns around to see this. Then, light started peeking around the cracks of the rocks. All of a sudden, the air around her got hotter and hotter. And then Bakugo popped up from the pile of rocks with a loud yell and a giant explosion surrounding his body. This focused explosion was so powerful that it made Uraraka fly off of the stage backwards. She was flying towards the wall, towards where her friends where her friends were sitting. She flew backward towards the wall where her friends were sitting. Izuku then quickly jumped into her path, catching her, taking the impact for her. When he hit his back with the wall, he cracked the wall. Everyone was taken off by that they all just looked at Bakugo, who was breathing heavily and had fire in his eyes. Midnight then found her uh, conscience and said, It would seem that Bakugo Katsuki is the winner. Nobody cheered. They all just sat there, unsure of what to do or what to say. Uraraka had passed out, and Izuku hurt his back taking the impact for her. He then carried himself and Uraraka to Recovery Woman's office.
She said she'll be fine. She just had a minor concussion. But you injured your back. Your spine's all disjointed. But I should be able to heal you. Hold still. Recovery Woman would heal Izuku, and she said, I have to ask, why did you take that damage for her? Izuku chuckles and he says, because she's my partner and we look after each other. When he, when he said that, almost everyone in his class came into the office concerned for Uraraka and Deku. That's his first time I ever said his hero name in a long time. They all ask if she's alright, and Izuku says, yeah, she's fine, she just had a concussion. But I kinda messed up my back, but I'm alright now. Yaoyorozu would approach Izuku, concerned for him, saying,
Oh my, are you sure you're alright, Izuku?
Yeah, I'm fine. Trust me. Shoto approaches. Is there anything that I can do to help you? Actually, yes, there is. If you could just like put some ice on my back, I'd really appreciate that. Shoto does this, and Izuku takes a sigh of relief, and then Bakugo enters the room, with mostly everyone glaring daggers at him. Hey, why is everyone staring at me like that? Kaminari says, Dude, you didn't have to go so hard on her, she's just a frail girl. Then Bakugo retorts, saying, There's nothing frail about her. She's a formidable opponent. She was quick, and I have a strong feeling that she's stronger than you, Sparky. Izuku then says, You guys, don't be so hard on him. I'm the one who told him not to go easy on her. Everyone would glare at Izuku, wondering, why would he do that? Bakugo gets in the conversation, saying, And even if he didn't tell me, I still would have did what I did. In the bed, Uraraka started grunting. Waking up, everyone turns their heads to look at her. Her vision, as she opens her eyes, her vision was blurry for a second, but then it cleared up to see all of her classmates. Izuku says, Hey, take it easy now. You just had a concussion. She slowly sits up in the bed and, while saying,
Hey guys, oh man, what happened?
Izuku says, Well, you were just knocked out and Bakugo won the round. Uraraka.
Oh, okay.
Tears would start to form in Uraraka's eyes, and most of her classmates would try to cheer her up. She then says,
It's just, I wanted to win for not just myself, but for my parents. I wanted to make them proud.
Uraraka then felt a hand on her shoulder. She looks up to see Izuku, saying, "Hey, your parents are proud of you. Everything you do and everything you try, they are proud of you. They're proud of you for committing and wanting to make yourself better and save people. You know, you are a true example of what every parent wants their kid to be like. A child who is not afraid to try anything and always wants to better themselves and others around them. And if that's not good enough for them, then I want you to acknowledge this, Uraraka. We, your classmates, are proud of you the most." Even more tears build up in Uraraka's eyes after hearing Izuku's words of wisdom. She leaped towards Izuku, giving him a hug. After everyone was done comforting Uraraka, Bakugo would step forward and he would say, "Hey, Uraraka, don't sell yourself short. You know, believe it or not, you're actually the first person who did a short amount of training and actually made me use half of my power. So keep that in mind and keep training." Bakugo leaves the room, and it was time for Tokoyami and Yaoyorozu's fight to begin. The two looked at each other and they nodded. Tokoyami leaves the room, and Yaoyorozu would pull Izuku aside to talk to him, asking him if he had if he had any advice for her to assure victory. Izuku would smile and say, "Just go beyond plus ultra and do your best. That's all there is. Good luck out there." She would smile and run off. Back in the recovery room, everyone would leave, and Izuku would give Uraraka a new UA jacket and said, "Will I see you in a few minutes?" Uraraka smiles and nods her
Uh huh.
head. Izuku then kisses her on the forehead and said, "See ya." He leaves the room to watch the fight. Uraraka looks to her new jacket for a second, and then she gets out of bed and equips it as she walks down the hallway with a smile on her face. As Class 1A was walking back to their seats, Ida had received the devastating phone call that his brother is hurt. Soon after, Tokoyami and Yaoyorozu were ready for their fight to begin. As they stand on opposite ends of the battle arena, Midnight would say, "Begin." Tokoyami would immediately use his Dark Shadow, and Yaoyorozu would conjure a shield. Before she could create a weapon, Dark Shadow would lunge at her and strike her shield, making her unable to use her quirk. She tries again, but Dark Shadow interferes, striking the shield again, pushing her back. Yaoyorozu notices that Dark Shadow keeps on going back to Tokoyami. She whispered,
Damn it. It must. I can't use my quirk if he keeps interfering. He must need to build up some momentum. That's why he keeps pushing me. I have an idea.
Yaoyorozu then crosses both of her arms in front of her, as if she was awaiting for Dark Shadow to strike once again. From the seats, everyone in 1A is watching closely. Izuku says, "I hope she knows what she's doing." "Why is that?" asked Bakugo. "Because one more hit and she's out of bounds. Tokoyami would win this battle." She stands there, awaiting for something to happen. Tokoyami was suspicious, but he went ahead and sent Dark Shadow in one more time to attack. It got closer and closer to her. Yaoyorozu then threw something into the air. Looking up at it, Tokoyami looked up at it, and so did Dark Shadow. Yaoyorozu then closes her eyes, looks down to the ground, and covers her ears while using her shield over her head. Tokoyami continues to stare at the thing that is flying into the sky, and he comes to the realization that it is a M84 stun grenade. Tokoyami was too late. The stun grenade went off blinding and deafening him, both him and Dark Shadow. Dark Shadow shrunk down because of the light, and Tokoyami covered his ears as his irises shrank down, causing meiosis. And so, Yayorozu took her opportunity. She then upgraded her small shield to a riot shield, charging at Tokoyami. The impact of the shield nearly knocked him out of the ring, but he was still in. Just one more hit, said Yayorozu. But then Tokoyami had Dark Shadow sweep the ground for Yayorozu, causing her to fall over. Dark Shadow feels around for Yayorozu once again, but every time she would jump out of the way, avoiding Dark Shadow's touch. She then conjured a strobe light to weaken Dark Shadow. Dark Shadow screamed and shrank back to Tokoyami. Tokoyami sees. I'm sorry. Yayorozu sees her opportunity once again, and with one fell swoop, she swings her riot shield at Tokoyami, and Tokoyami flies backwards, landing himself out of the ring. Midnight declares Yayorozu as the winner, and Class 1A would go on to cheer at Yayorozu for her victory. Yayorozu takes Tokoyami to Recovery Woman, and we skip to Kirishima and Tetsu's fight. Their fight went like in the show, only this time both of them were out since it came to a draw. This is to speed up the process a little bit to get to Izuku, Bakugo, and Shoto's fight. While this means Yayorozu was given a choice whether to fight one of the three boys or back out of the challenge completely. Yayorozu would stare at her choice of fighters, and you think that she would choose Izuku, but instead she chose Todoroki. After a few minutes of her regaining her energy, it was time for her to fight Shoto. Before it would start, Shoto would say, "Just so you know, I don't plan on going easy on you." Yayorozu readies herself and says, "Good, I don't expect you to." Midnight then said, "Begin," but before Yayorozu could create anything, Shoto conjured ice underneath her feet, holding her in place and barricading her arms together with ice. Yayorozu was bewildered of what was happening and said, "Hey, what the hell, Shoto?" Shoto walked closer to her and said, "Hey, I said I wasn't going to go easy on you, so I'm not going to give you a chance to fight." Shoto then heats up the ground a little bit and separates the ice from her feet. And then, giving her a little push, he slides her out of bounds, giving him victory. Shoto then melts the ice around her and she walks off back to her seat, a little frustrated. And now it was time for the fight between the three boys, Izuku Midoriya, Katsuki Bakugo, and Shoto Todoroki. The boys stood there on equal grounds of the battlefield. Before midnight would start, the boys would be doing their stretches. Izuku says to himself, "There's no doubt that these two are going to come after me first at the same time. I'll give them what they want for a few seconds and catch them by surprise." Midnight then said, "Are you boys ready?" Each of them nodding their heads, and Midnight said, "Begin." Bakugo and Shoto would look at Izuku directly. Without even a warning, Shoto would shoot a path of ice towards Izuku while Bakugo threw an explosion at him. "I knew it," said Izuku. The young boy then ran towards the ice, dodging the explosion. He then uses the ice and his fire to eject himself into the air. While he was airborne, he conjured a giant ball of fire over his head, and he lunged it back at the ground, causing a minor sort of fiery explosion with a huge heat wave.
Shoto had risen a ice shield to block him, while Bakugo dodged it by using an explosion to go up towards Izuku. While in the sky, the two would keep themselves levitating with their quirks. The two boys would punch each other and dodging each other's attacks. Bakugo would get hit a bunch of times, but so would Izuku. Bakugo would get a hit on Izuku, punching him in the face, and Izuku would retaliate by using fire to propel his feet up to Bakugo's face. Bakugo plummets towards the ground, but he regained his composure and caught himself. With a bruise on his face, he grunts and he lunges back towards Izuku, but before he could reach him, Shoto got in between them, riding a giant block of ice towards them, while saying, "Hey, don't leave me out of this." Shoto then started surfing around them, forming what appears to be an upside down swirl. Bakugo said, "What the hell are you doing, Shoto?" Shoto then smirks, and Izuku finally understands what he is doing, but he is too late. Shoto then reached the top of his trap, and he punches it, causing the supports to break and the trap collapsing on top of them. The swirl of ice started falling on top of both Bakugo and Izuku. They were both buried underneath the ice when they hit the ground. Shoto then landed back onto the field. It's quiet for a second, but then ice started turning into a river of water passing his feet. From his left and his right, suddenly Bakugo popped up from the ground and Izuku popped up from the ground, but in his wolf form with fire flowing through him. He snarled and growled while exposing his teeth. Bakugo and Wolfie Izuku lunged at Shoto at the same time. Shoto then built a ice bubble around him, and Bakugo and Izuku would start punching at the shield. Bakugo would punch it with explosions, and Izuku would be blowing fire at it. It was melting fast, and Shoto had to think quick. And so, using his fire, he builds up pressure in his ice bubble, and just as Bakugo and Izuku are about to crack it, Shoto causes it to explode. Bakugo and Izuku then flew back and almost fell out of the ring. "Well, that didn't work," said Shoto. Izuku stood up and shook the water off of him while Bakugo charged at Shoto, and the two fought. Izuku then thought to himself, "I gotta separate them, and I know just what to do." Izuku then howled, calling in more allies. They all charged in, separating the two by jumping on each other, threatening to bite them or burn them. Bakugo said, "What the hell, Izuku?" While Shoto was like, whoa, hey, calm down there, Wolfie. While Bakugo was distracted by the wolves, Izuku then lunged at Shoto, and it looked like he was about to bite him, but instead he turned back into his human form and landed a blow on his face. The two would brawl and scrap for a while Bakugo was stuck in a stalemate with one of the wolves. He then struggled to say, "We are not doing this again." His hands then sparked, and he blew up the wolves that surrounded him. They all got a little bigger from the flames. While he was distracted with the wolves, Izuku and Shoto continued their fight. This goes on for a while, but Bakugo's had enough of the fight with the wolves, and he yells, "That's it! I've had enough of this!"
He then aims both of his hands down and he explodes himself upwards. And with another explosion, he ground pounds, distancing the wolves away from him while interfering with Izuku and Shoto's fight. They di- they looked directly at Bakugo. Bakugo then saw his chance, and he uses stun grenade, temporarily blinding his opponents, both Izuku and his wolves and Shoto. The two grunted while covering their eyes, feeling a strong sting sensation of the violent rays. Izuku says, "Damn it, I can't see." From in front of him, he heard Bakugo saying, "Good." He then started punching Izuku and Shoto. Bakugo was able to land every hit on the boys and having a good time while doing it. The boys would try and block his attacks, but Bakugo would uppercut them and they would not be able to predict where he is about to swing, unfortunately. Izuku then took a deep breath and he listened closely for Bakugo's movements. He then goes back to Izuku and Izuku listens closely. Bakugo throws a right hook, only for Izuku to catch his fist. "What the hell?" said Bakugo. He tries his left hand, but Izuku caught that too. "Hey, stop that!" said Bakugo. Izuku then kicks Bakugo in the stomach, and it's back to them having to fight. Only this time, Izuku cannot see. Bakugo tries again to swing at Izuku, but Izuku keeps dodging his attacks. He even attempts to use an explosion on him. It would do some effect on him because it was loud, but Izuku remembered Bakugo's punching patterns and blocked every one of his attacks. From Shoto, he regained some of his sight, but it was still kind of hard for him to see. He makes out Izuku and Bakugo fighting. Ice would pass in between them, and they would look to see a Shoto approaching them. They both kind of gang up on Shoto for a minute, and Izuku's sight returns to him. He says, "You know what? I'm ending this." He then gets a good distance between his brothers, and his while in his human form, he had his wolves run around in a circle around the fighting arena. This forms a giant tornado that Izuku used in the cavalry battle. The two would look at Izuku as fire start to swirl around them. Bakugo then used an explosion to take to the sky. When he is high up, he sees it. Izuku's fire tornado. It was tall, and everyone had a look of bewilderment on their faces, including Endeavor himself. Bakugo thought to himself that he had to get back in there, and so he charges up Howitzer Impact. While he does this, inside the fire tornado, Izuku was charging up his fire with one last hit. Well, not exactly one last hit, he just charged it up. Shoto then does the same thing but with his ice. The two would then charge at each other, and when they clash their fists together, the tornado would warp as if a bomb went off inside of it. Izuku then said, "I'm really gonna end this, Shoto." Shoto then says, "Bring it." The fire around Izuku's body expanded even bigger, like a Super Saiyan charging up their power, and Shoto made it even colder in their surroundings. Izuku runs towards Shoto with one last punch, and Shoto did the same thing. Bakugo then charged back into the fire tornado with its howitzer impact, and as Izuku and Shoto are about to bash their fists together again, Bakugo joined in, bashing his fist against theirs, causing a huge gust of wind. and all three of the boys flew back. Izuku, Bakugo, and Shoto were tossing and turning on the ground. Everyone is sitting on the edge of their seats, wondering what happened or who is still standing. The smoke slowly lifted, revealing that Izuku and Shoto have flied out of the ring, leaving Bakugo as the last one standing, just by a hair. Midnight then declared Bakugo the winner of the sports festival, and everyone in the crowd started cheering for Bakugo. And Bakugo says, "Yes, I won! In your face, guy!" He stops in mid sentence, for he saw Izuku and Shoto struggling to get up. Bakugo then made his way towards the two and he helps them up. Present Mike says, "Look at this, ladies and gentlemen. These three boys really have respect for each other." And so the sports festival is reaching its end. Bakugo receives his first place medal, while Yaoyorozu receives the second place medal, and Shoto and Izuku have to share their third place medal. It's the next day. Izuku was walking to school with Yaoyorozu, and Uraraka by the arms. Izuku looked to Uraraka and she sees that she had a sort of concerned look on her face. "Hey, Uraraka,
Um, yes?
is there something wrong?" Yaoyorozu looks over and says,
I think it's about time we talk to him.
"Oh, talk to me about what?" They both then let go of Izuku's arm and they walk in front of him. And Yaoyorozu says, "Listen, Izuku, after, that day when you came back to normal after being a wolf pup, me and Uraraka, we talked for a while and we want to know. And what would that be?" Uraraka says, "If you had to choose between one of us to date, who would you choose? I mean, we all get along well, but we want to know personally, which one of us would you choose?" Izuku thinks and he paces back and forth and he comes to a conclusion. He gives out a sigh and he says, "Listen, both of you are spectacular, but I can't just choose between the two of you. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I do like you guys. It's just the fact that I don't think I'm worthy of love, and I don't think I deserve either of you. Perhaps it's best if we all just remain friends and just go our separate ways." I mean, I see the beautiful friendship that you two have. I do hope that you guys keep that going. But if we could still be partners, that would still be great. I do hope you two are okay with that. But I just can't choose between you two. I'm sorry. Izuku then starts walking, thinking that the girls are following him, but when he turns around, he sees that they were standing in the same place. They were on the verge of crying. Izuku then ran back to them and said, "Look, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you cry. I. Izuku was interrupted when Yaoyorozu and Uraraka leaped at him and they hugged him. Uraraka says,
We're sorry.
"You're sorry? Sorry for what?" Yaoyorozu says,
We wanted to test you to see if you choose between us. And what you said just made us feel bad for doing it. We're sorry if we made you feel guilty.
Izuku says, "Hey, now, it's okay. There's nothing to be sorry about or to cry about. Now, Yaoyorozu, you weren't there when me and Uraraka, we had a talk about me not having much dating experience or what love is, but now I do know. Love is something that you cherish and the moments with people that you care about. Like how I care about you two. Love is something that you give to someone and that person reciprocates those feelings. And when I'm with you, and when I'm with both of you, I can't help but not have those feelings. If it's just one of you, I can't feel those. And I'll be there. I'll bet there's still more things that there is to know, but only if you two will let me. The two girls then nodded their heads, and Yayarozu says, "It sounds good to me." "Me too," said Uraraka. Izuku then said, "Well, I'm glad we had this talk. Now come on, we gotta get going for school." Both of the girls then latched back onto Izuku, and they continued their walk. Soon after, they make it to class, and the three had to separate to get to their seats. The classes started, and Mr. Aizawa walked into the classroom with Midnight. They would talk about hero names and that it's time for the students themselves to choose their names. Otherwise, if they can't, the teachers would choose for them. So, after a few minutes, everyone chooses their hero name, and Bakugo had King Explosion, and Sue had Froppy, but Izuku had a bit of trouble choosing a name for himself. He says to himself in his mind, I need a name that represents who I am and what my quirk is about. Ooh, how about Hellhound? Or maybe Cerberus? All Pyro or Wolf Pyro? How about Firewolf or Red Wolf? Hmm, Keiji? That means fire eater in Japanese. Oh wait, how about Phoenix Wolf? Omega? Wildfangs. Wildfire. Firehound. The possibilities are endless. Oh, wait, I got an idea. While writing his hero name on his little board, he was called by Midnight. "Izuku, can you step up?" He gets up from his seat. While still writing his hero name, he reaches the podium and he finished, saying, "Done. This is the hero name that I've chosen wisely. I am the Wolf Flaming Hero, Firefang." Everyone would agree that that name actually fits Izuku really well. And when the time comes, Class 1A reads a bulletin board with names of corporations, and surprisingly enough, Izuku, Bakugo, and Shoto got the most applications. By the end of class, everyone was getting ready to go home, but before the boys went anywhere, they talked amongst each other. Bakugo starts the conversation. "Hey, Izuku, so what corporation are you going to join?" Izuku huffs and he says, "None of them." Bakugo and Shoto were shocked by what they were hearing, and Shoto asks why, and Izuku says because there's a full moon coming. The hair on the back of their heads stood up when they heard Izuku say that, and Bakugo says, "Oh yeah, I forgot about that. But you have been meditating a lot, right? Maybe you could control it, who knows?" "I have been meditating, but I can't take any chances. It's best for everybody's safety that I go to the beast forest and I isolate myself so I don't hurt anyone. Although all I would have to do to change into a werewolf is look at the moon, I still can't take any chances. It only takes one glare. I have to go." Shoto thinks for a second and he says, "Well, if that's true, that all you have to do is look at the moon, you'll change. Why don't you ask Mei Hatsume girl to make you some sort of specialized lenses so that when you look at the moon, it could cloak it. That way you can't see it?" I don't really know how this works. Izuku says, "That actually sounds like a great idea. Here, come on, let's go. Let's go ask her." Izuku, Bakugo, and Shoto get up and they leave the room, but they were stopped when Uraraka and Yaoyorozu asked if they could do something after school. But Izuku says, Maybe later. I need to go and see Mei from the support group. I'll see you girls later." The two girls look as the boys continue to walk away, and they get suspicious looks on their faces. We then skip to the support group room. A giant
metal door stood between them. Izuku reaches over to open it when the door explodes. When it happened, Izuku quickly absorbs the fire around it, but they were still thrown back, landing on their backsides. When the smoke cleared, something landed on top of Izuku. Izuku discovers that Mei had landed on top of her with her chest pressed up against Izuku's. From the distance, Uraraka and Yaoyorozu were spying on Izuku and were angered when they saw that Mei was on top of them. Mei says,
"Oh, hey, Wolf Boy, what are you doing on the ground?"
Izuku then says, nothing, just enjoying the view. Anyway, we need to talk, Mei. Izuku looked over and he asked Bakugo and Shoto if they were alright. They both then said that they're fine, and Izuku would ask Mei if she could make him lenses that could block out a full moon,
"Interesting.
said Mei.
And may I ask you why you want such a contraption?"
Izuku goes on to explain his dangerous form when there is a full moon and wants to take extra precaution.
I might be able to get the job done in a few hours. Check back on me again later on.
Okay, great, says Izuku. They all leave the room, and Uraraka and Yaoyorozu heard their conversation and were concerned for Izuku. While they were a good distance away, Bakugo said, so, if she ends up making these lenses that'll prevent you from changing, will you stay? Izuku says no. Once again, for the safety of everyone else, I need to go to the Beast Forest. It's best that I just stay there for a few days. Maybe if the lenses do work, I'll come back. Shoto says, well, in that case, I don't want you to go at this alone. I'm gonna go with you. Izuku says, Shoto, no, it could be dangerous, but I can help you, just in case you decided you want to leave the Beast Forest. I could keep you isolated until you change back. But on your own, though, I don't even know how strong I'll become. Bakugo goes into the conversation saying, well, in that case, I should be there too, to back him up, just in case he needs it. Watch your back. You also think you might be disregarding the animal's life in the forest? What if you end up changing and you end up using your fire quirk? You could end up causing a forest fire. Izuku says, oh, you're right, I haven't thought about that. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. Bakugo says, hey, what are brothers for? And Shoto says, yeah, we look after each other. Izuku smiles and they do their signature handshake where they grab each other's wrists like this. A few hours would pass, and Mei would create the little contacts that would deflect the sight of the moon. To him, it would look like it is not there. Izuku would thank her and say that if she ever needs anything, to just ask him. After each of the boys inform their parents about about what they plan on doing, they pack up a few things for their camping trip. The three boys make their way deeper into the beast forest. Surprisingly, after a short amount of time, what once was a scorched, burned wasteland turned back to its natural glory. Izuku says, oh man, it's so great to be back here. You know, you guys are really gonna like it here. You know, there's fresh air, there's sights to see, and the animals are great. The boys would then find a spot to unpack, building up their tents. After a minute, a river was just a few feet away, and Izuku would go and catch some fish for Bakugo and Shoto. Izuku says, so. Oh wait, Shoto says, so, Izuku, what are some things you did when you were out here by yourself? Izuku says, well, I would basically do normal camping things. I would go on hikes, I would swim, and for a while, I would actually enjoy the view from the mountaintops. And for training purposes, I would climb 90-degree walls and
I would lift boulders. This one time I actually challenged a cougar to chase me around and try to catch me, just for the fun of it. He still has never caught me. And you know what? In fact, hang on a second. Izuku looks around where there are more trees. He then stretches a few times and he gets a running start and he runs towards the trees. And then once he reaches them, he then does a big leap into the air and he ricochets from tree to tree. And when he gets a good distance away, he then lands back down doing a superhero landing saying, "Yep, I still got it." Bakugo then asks, "Hey, how did you do that?" Izuku would say, "A little frog taught me its ways when I brought it some water." I walked up to him and I says, "Aren't you supposed to be in Malaysia or Borneo or someplace like that?" The frog told me, "Look, buddy, I go where I want to and I choose to be here." Shoto says, "Wait, so you could talk to animals?" Izuku says, "Yeah, it's one of the greatest aspects of being a wolf. And you know what? We're outdoors. I think I'll spread my wings for a while." Izuku then got on all fours and he changed into his gray wolf form to feel more open to his surroundings. Yeah, this feels a lot better. So, while we wait, do you guys want to go a few rounds? Suddenly, the bushes nearby started moving and the three boys were prepared themselves, but what emerged from the bush was Ochako and Momo falling on the ground with camping equipment. They both look up and Uraraka says,
So, hey boys, it's fancy meeting you here.
Izuku says, "You two, what are you doing here?" "Yajirozu, I seem to recall banishing you from the beast's forest. What are you doing here?"
Well, we heard about your situation involving the full moon, and we decided that we wanted to join in and help you protect the forest. Also, you said that I had to have guidance the next time I enter the beast forest to keep an eye on me. That's why Uraraka is here. She was concerned as well.
Izuku grows irritated at this and saying, "No, no, 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 no. You two need to go home. This could be dangerous."
But we just, but we're just worried about you, and we just want to support you.
Said Yajirozu. Uraraka says,
Yeah, and we want to protect the wilderness just in case the contacts don't work. We'll get all the animals out before anything could go out of hand.
Izuku paces back and forth and he says, "Okay, fine. But this is for all of you to know this. If things end up going sideways, I think it's best if you all just leave me." They all speak up, saying things like, "No, and we're not gonna leave you. We're gonna protect the forest and you. We look out for one each other, and we don't leave friends behind." Izuku smiled and said, "Thank you. You guys are the best. Anyway, we have about a week until the full moon comes. Now, I'm gonna inform you girls of something real quick because this is something that you need to know. Now, Bakugo, Shoto, do you remember when I asked you guys if you wanted to be wolves?" The boys nodded their heads, saying yes. And Izuku would explain, "Well, in order for you to get werewolfism, now I know y'all don't want me to, but in order to prevent the werewolfism, I must not bite or scratch you guys because that's how you get werewolfism. And that goes the same for you two. If you are going to have to end up fighting me, it must be from a distance. Do not let me get close, because if I end up scratching you or biting you, then you got werewolfism. Alright?" The girls would nod their heads. Izuku said, "Okay, great. Now we need to start planning just in case things go sideways." They all nodded their heads, and Izuku made sure that everyone had a full layout of the forest. Eventually, they found what appears to be their soon-to-be training camp, still in the process of being built. And eventually, they come across Mandalay assisting the construction workers. Izuku walks up to her and he says, "Excuse me, what's going on here?" Mandalay turns around and she immediately recognizes Izuku from the sports festival and says, "Hey, you're the Firewolf boy, Izuku Midoriya. It's a pleasure to meet you." "Thank you. Now back to my question. What is going on here? Why is this building being put in a forest?" Mandalay would go on to explain, saying, "Oh, well, this place is for UA students. It's a training camp. So I guess that means that this campground is for you guys." Izuku says, "Well, if you ask me, I don't know if I agree with what you guys are building here. This forest is not for buildings. It's only for temporary camping groupings." Mandalay then says, "Oh, well, I assure you, this will be the only building in this forest. We will also be protecting the animals, and we will also be looking out for wildfires, because believe it or not, we made this place when you first popped up, when we saw the news and you saved the rest of the forest from being burned. We had to take some actions ourselves to assure that that never happens again." Izuku then says, "Well, I'm glad I opened up some people's eyes, but promise me that this is the only building that will be put in this forest." Mandalay promises, and they all leave.
After that encounter with Mandalay, the three boys were walking through the forest when they came across a bear. This particular bear was familiar to Izuku, while Shoto and Bakugo were on their guard. Izuku told them, "Guys, wait, I think I know this one." Izuku got closer to the bear and they stared back at each other for a few seconds, and Izuku then kneeled down and said, "Hey, Mama Bear, how you been? I haven't seen you guys in a while." Now, from the boys' perspective, all they're hearing is ordinary bear noises. Anyway, Izuku and Mama Bear continued to talk. "Oh, really? It's so cool. Hey, what happened to Kachan?" "What? He has a quirk?" That's pretty. That's pretty rare. You know, we actually have someone in our class who is also animal, and he has a quirk as well. In fact, our principal is an animal as well, and he's very smart. So, what's his quirk? Oh, a strength enhancement. That's what it sounds like. Huh. Well, where is he now? Bakugo and Shoto continue to stare on in confusion, wondering what is Mama Bear saying. Izuku then said, "Oh, he left to do his best to control it?" Huh. Sounds interesting. Uh-huh. Yeah, I'll keep an eye open for him just in case. Like, hey, it really is good to see you again. But like, hey, just to give you a quick heads up, something might happen tonight, and I want you to be on your guard. Like, you know, if you ever see anything strange, just be careful, okay? Alright, great. It was good seeing you again. Bye. Izuku then gets up and Mama Bear walks away. Shoto asks, "Izuku, what did she say?" "Oh, well, we were just catching up for just a second. She was just telling me about Kachan and how he had gotten a quirk." Bakugo says, "Wait, isn't that the name that you once gave me when we were kids?" "Yeah, but I decided to give it to a little cub because, what the hell?" "So, what was his quirk?" Well, it's it's kind of like this. Mama Bear over there said that she woke up one day and she just found her cub big and strong, and he just left to go train himself on how to properly use it. I wonder how he's doing right now. Hopefully his quirk isn't causing him any trouble. Anyway, we'll keep an eye out for him. Right now, we need to get back to the plan and get a full layout of the land. After some time, Shoto got an idea on what to do in case Izuku werewolves out, telling them that they could snare him in this empty cave and barricade him in with ice. Izuku says, that's actually a really good idea. They make up a few more ideas just in case things go sideways. They even take it a step forward and even make traps just in case for extra precaution. They had about a week before there was a full moon, and in those 7 days, Izuku has been training his friends on the ways of animal life. He taught Shoto how to jump through trees like he does, and he taught Bakugo how to run like a cheetah. While the girls were just flirting with Izuku the whole time. While back in the city, Tenya Ida was on the lookout for the person who fatally wounded his brother, the hero killer, Stain. Back in the forest, the sun was setting, and tonight was the night where the beast will eventually awaken within Izuku. Izuku was meditating next to the waterfall in his human form. The sky was golden, and birds were flying by. As Izuku takes in a deep breath, he not only heard the sound of the waterfall, but he also heard rumbling noises from right behind him. He then says, you two need to be more quiet if you want to sneak up on me. Yaoyorozu and Uraraka pop out, and Uraraka says,
It's no fair, you have enhanced hearing.
Izuku then was about to say something as he turned around, but then he saw the girls in their undergarments. Izuku got a surprised look on his face, and he asks, why are you two dressed like that? Yaoyorozu says,
We just wanted to go swimming for a minute. And hey, since you're here, why don't you join us?
Izuku says, no thank you, I just... Izuku couldn't help but stare at the girl's cleavage. The girls notice this, and they start teasing Izuku by posing provocatively a few times. Uraraka says,
You like what you see?
Izuku says nervously, well, yes, I do. The girls then giggled and they jumped into the water. Izuku watches, and after a few minutes have passed, the two girls then got out of the water and sat down next to Izuku. Yaoyorozu says,
I gotta say, these past few days have been a lot of fun. We should do this again sometime.
Izuku says, well, I'm glad you two are enjoying what nature has to offer. You know, there are some times when I just want to lay back and I just want to reflect on all the things that I've done in my life. And I gotta say, I couldn't be happier. I saved a lot of people, and I've made a lot of friends, and I met you two. Izuku hugs the girls closer to him and says, I just wish that moments like these could last just a little while longer. Yaoyorozu and Uraraka blush a little bit, and they look to each other and they nodded. And Yaoyorozu says,
Izuku, is there a place where we could have some privacy?
well, there is a secret cave just behind the waterfall. Why?
Well, can you take us to it?
Asked Yaoyorozu. Sure, but there's nothing back there. Izuku gets up and he takes the girls behind the waterfall. It only went in a few feet deep. Izuku says, well, here it is, but like I said, there's nothing here. Yaoyorozu says,
Izuku, could you close your eyes for a minute?
why?
Please, just do it.
Said Uraraka. Izuku then said, okay, as he closes his eyes. He then tries to use his hearing to predict what's happening, but he didn't hear much but the waterfall. Suddenly, both of Izuku's wrists were grabbed and his hands were touching something soft and bouncy. In his mind, he says, what is this? He then slowly opens his eyes to see Yaoyorozu and Uraraka placing his hand on their breasts as they blush. Izuku says, whoa, 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 wait, what are you doing? They both just stand there not saying anything, but then they push Izuku down and crawling all over him. Izuku says, wait, I need to process this. Just. Yaoyorozu then places an index finger over Izuku's lips, telling him,
Please, just let us do this.
while on the ground, Yaoyorozu and Uraraka started kissing on Izuku, and this is where I'm going to have to skip, for not just my sake, but for YouTube's sake, for the sinful things that they were doing behind that waterfall. Back at their hangout, Bakugo and Shoto were waiting for them to return. Bakugo says, ugh, where are those three? It's about time, the moon is almost here. From the distance, Izuku and Uraraka and Yaoyorozu were walking with smiles on their faces and attached at the hip. Bakugo says, where the hell have you two been? The moon is almost out. Bakugo sees the look on Uraraka and Yaoyorozu's faces, and Izuku says, I think it's best if we don't talk about it. Anyway, there's still some time until the moon comes, so how about we just sit back, we contemplate, and we get ready. A few minutes went by. It was getting darker and the moon was almost up. Izuku said, it's almost time, you guys. We need to get ready. Everyone stood up and Izuku grabbed the contact lenses. Before he puts them on, he says, okay, everyone, you all know about my ability to make others wolves, so just remember, if I change, don't let me bite you, don't let me scratch you. Got it? They all nodded their heads, and Izuku puts on the contact lenses. When he put both of them on, they both emitted a golden light, and then eventually that light slowly faded away. Izuku turns around and he says, well, how do I look? Bakugo says, you look like you're about to change right now. Yaoyorozu says,
wow, that's pretty cool.
And Shoto says, I cannot stop looking at your eyes. Izuku chuckles. Izuku then felt it. He knew that the moon was up because not only did his wolf say that it was up, but he felt stronger and his human senses were increased 10 times greater. He felt it. He felt the power. Izuku says, okay guys, the moon is up. And there's only one way to see if these contacts work. Shoto, point me in the direction of the moon. Shoto then pointed up behind Izuku, but before he could turn around, he says, okay, you guys, remember the plan. They all nodded one more time, and Izuku took a deep breath, turned around, and he slowly looked up and saw nothing. Shoto, am I looking at the moon? Yeah, you're looking at it, I'm certain of it. I don't see it. In their eyes, the moon was full and it was shining bright. A minute goes by and Uraraka says,
Izuku, are you okay?
Izuku says, I think it's working. He then turned around to face them and says, I think we're safe. When he said that, Izuku let out what sounded like a painful grunt. He held his stomach like it was hurting a lot. He fell to his knees and he panted really fast. Everyone backed up with fear, as if Izuku was about to change. But then Izuku started laughing. He got y'all so good. Izuku continues to laugh, and Bakugo, Shoto, Momo, Uraraka are mad at Izuku for tricking them. Bakugo says, "That wasn't funny, you bastard. You scared the hell out of us." Izuku says, "I'm sorry. I just couldn't help myself. It was just too perfect." Izuku continues to laugh some more. Bakugo and Shoto share a look and they smile. Without even a warning, they then grabbed Izuku by his arms and his legs and they threw him into the water. "Hey, what the heck was that about?" Bakugo and Shoto said,
We're sorry,
We
we
couldn't
couldn't
help
help
ourselves.
ourselves.
It was just too perfect." They all started laughing. After a few minutes, they had packed up their things and they went back to the town, happy that the contact lenses work. Now, duly noted, this is all happening on the same night. As they're halfway back into the city, a TV screen plays the news on the bus, with the news reporter saying that the town is under attack by Nomus of the League of Villains. Izuku sees the footage, and when he saw the Nomus, he was angered because of the first time he encountered one of these things. He wanted to join the fight. There was traffic stopping them, and Izuku told his team that he was going to go out there and go help fight the Nomus. The girls would try to talk Izuku down, but he would persist that he had to go. While the boys wanted to join in on Izuku's fight, Izuku told the girls that everything would be alright and that he's not going to let these things run amok on his town. He then kisses them goodbye, and then he asks the bus driver to open the door. They leave the bus and they run downtown as fast as they could. Smoke began to fly from the buildings towards the sky, for there was fire. In the city, Endeavor, along with other pro heroes, were fighting alongside him. The Nomus, luckily, none of them had a healing factor, but still had to be taken down, for they were too deemed much of a threat. Endeavor then focused one of his fires on one of the Nomu's heads and cremates it, killing it instantly. He then found himself surrounded by Nomus all over. He gets ready to go all out, but then he heard the familiar explosions and he turned around and he saw Izuku, Bakugo, and Shoto coming to aid him. Endeavor spoke with excitement in his voice. "Boys!" The boys then took down a number of Nomus and a Nomu nearly got the drop on Endeavor. But then Shoto threw a big old ball of fire at the Nomu, killing it. "Great job, son," said Endeavor. After a few minutes, the boys had taken down some Nomus in the area and wanted to move on to the next part. But before they could, Endeavor says to the boys, "If anyone asks, I gave you boys permission to use your quirks." The boys nodded their heads and they moved on to help other pro heroes having trouble with Nomus. But in the process, Izuku heard screaming. It sounded familiar to him, and then he remembered the voice being Ida's. Without even letting his team know where he was going, Izuku followed the sound. When he got closer, he smelled blood. He finally reached the source, and he peeked his head around the corner to see Ida lying on the ground with blood falling from his shoulder, with the hero killer standing over him. He had another hero laying down on the ground a few feet behind him. Izuku sneaked around while Stain spoke. "So, let me get this straight. Instead of being concerned for another human's life, you choose to want to kill me for revenge over getting him out of danger?" Ida lays there on the ground, unable to move, and he says, "You hurt my brother. He will never be the same again. And it's all because of you. My brother was my hero. You're just like every other villain in this world." Stain grows irritated by this, and he punches Ida on the side of his face, leaving a bruise.
I am not a villain,
Said Stain. I am the truth. You think you're being taught by real heroes? You're not. You're being taught by corrupted people who only get into this business because of fame and money. That's not what being a hero is about. Being a hero is all about truth and justice. That's what it's all about. It's all about sacrifice and willing to lay down your life for the greater good. Nowadays, you got corporations hiring heroes as if they're paid workers. Just makes me sick to my stomach to even think about that. Stain then kneeled down and he looked deeply into Ida's eyes and he says, "Your brother is a coward, and I might have to pay him a visit later and finish the job." Ida says, "You bastard, don't talk about my brother and stay away from him." Stain would then shush Ida and he says, "We got company." Ida looks behind Stain and Stain turns around to see Izuku standing there a few feet away. He looks down and he saw the hero that he was originally going for was gone. Stain said, "Where is he?" Izuku says, "I took him away from here and I hid him." Ida looks at Izuku and he says, "Midoriya, what are you doing here? Get out of here while you still can. This fight is between me and him." Izuku says, "What fight? You're lying on the ground. There is no fight. This is just pathetic, Ida." Stain then said, "Oh wait, Midoriya. I remember that name. I watched you in the sports festival. Yeah, I like you, kid, because I remember your speech. You didn't want to be the number one hero anymore. You just wanted to have the right to be called a hero and protect your friends, your neighborhood, and your city. I was amazed by your speech, and it's because of that." Stain then kneeled down and he said, "I respect you because you're wise and at such a young age." "Well, thank you, Stain. I do hope that maybe you could look past this road of debauchery and let my friend go." Stain gets a devilish smile on his face and he says, "Sorry, but I can't. You see, your friend here, he valued the need to get revenge over the safety of others. He's a fake just like his brother. As a hero, it's supposed to be your job to preserve and protect. He failed that miserably. Therefore, he must die." Fire started emanating off Izuku's body. He takes a step forward and he says, "I won't allow you to hurt him." Stain then says, "Oh, Izuku, you disappoint me. But if a fight is what you want..." Stain then drawed his twin katanas and he says, "A fight is what you'll get." Stain and Izuku ran in at each other, and Izuku was successful in landing a few blows on Stain. After those hits, Stain distanced himself after he was punched directly in the face by Izuku, for it brought back some horrifying memories. Izuku stands there next to Ida and he says, "Ida, what's his quirk?" Ida says, "He's able to paralyze his opponents by tasting their blood. No matter what he does, Midoriya, don't let him cut you." "I see. So that explains why you have all those daggers and swords around you. To draw the blood from your opponent. Well, I haven't used this trick in a minute. Let's hope it works well." Izuku then turns to Stain, and his eyes turn red, and he focuses on all the metal on Stain's body. "Why are you staring at me like that, boy?" Suddenly, and he looks into Izuku's eyes and he sees that they were glowing red Suddenly, Stain started feeling intense heat built up near his thighs and his hands where his swords and daggers were. He screamed in agony as he was forced to drop all of his weapons. Izuku tries to make all the metal melt, but unfortunately he couldn't make it hot enough, so he stopped. Stain says, "Wow, that's a pretty cool trick. But you didn't get all of them." Stain then reached into his back heel and he pulled out a mini dagger and charged at Izuku, and Izuku charged back. Izuku tries to use his heat vision on the dagger to make him drop it, but he kept on moving it so much that he couldn't focus on it. While the two were fighting, Stain would test Izuku's fighting skills in combat, seeing how he would react to his attacks, and to his surprise, he passes all of them. After a few minutes, the two would stop to catch their breath. Izuku thought he had his chance to heat up his dagger, but Stain hit it. Stain then says, you fight a good fight, kid. But Stain then raised the dagger into the air with a little bit of Izuku's blood on it. Wait, how? When did he cut me? This was bad. Izuku knew that if Stain licked that blood, then it's gonna be all over. And so, in a desperate attempt, Izuku quickly charged in at Stain, stopping him from licking his blood by kicking the dagger into the air and having it hang just on the edge of the building that they were in between. Stain then started jumping off of the walls of the alley that they were in and went for the dagger. Izuku would use his frogging methods to quickly get up there quicker, but he couldn't help but notice that Stain was kind of being slow, as if he was being slow on purpose. Deku was about to grab the blade, but then, in a sudden turn of events, his blood that was on the blade drooped off of the tip, and it fell right towards Stain into his mouth, where Izuku would be paralyzed. While still in midair, Deku then fell from 16 feet, landing on his back with his head ringing and his back in so much pain. The young boy was stuck looking at the sky. Stain stood there laughing like a psychopath. When he finished, he says, "You actually gave me a good fight, kid. But now it's time for me to finish what I started and kill your friend. And since I like you, I'll let you live. Although you might be missing a finger or two." Stain then walked over to Ida, but before he could do anything, something happened. You see, when Deku hit the ground, the contact lenses that were covering his irises slid out of their place to the sides of his eyeballs, and right above him was the full moon. Izuku could not look away, for the power of the beast have overtaken him, and he started changing. First, he screamed so loud that Stain turned around and said, "What's the matter? Does it hurt?" "Well, guess what, kid? Life is nothing but pain." Stain watches in bewilderment as he sees Deku's body started to change. Izuku's body started to grow and expand. From the inside, he felt like something was tearing him apart, and he felt like he was completely on fire. It felt like agony. His muscles started to grow, and his face stretched out to a painful length as his face started to take the shape of a wolf. but it was bigger. He was growing. Soon, Izuku started to sound like the devil. His vocals changed, giving him a deep voice, what some would consider monstrous. Soon, Izuku's torso started ripping off his clothes, and claws started to grow from his hands and his feet, and he grows razor sharp teeth as his ears moved from their original spot up to the top of his head. Izuku's transformation was complete. He stood there at 7 foot 2, panting like an angry predator. He looked dead at Stain, and all Stain could see was this hulking beast, something that was definitely stronger than him. Stain was in so much bewilderment that he couldn't move at all. All he could do was stare back with his eyes wide open. Izuku then took the first step towards Stain. It shook the ground. Stain speaks, but he is overflowing with fear. How are you still walking? Without even giving him an answer, Werewolf Izuku then punched the man into the concrete wall that was next to them. He fell to the ground, and he got up, still unable to fight Werewolf Izuku. Izuku then punched Stain in the chest over and over again, and with each punch that he did, it would crack the wall even deeper, and the crack would go higher and higher from the building. Eventually, Stain spitted out his own blood, and Deku stopped. And in that process of senseless beating, he broke Stain's ribs. And finally, Stain built up enough courage to stab Werewolf Izuku in his left arm, and being as quick as he could, he then licked the dagger with his blood. But the only thing that happened was that Werewolf Izuku turned from side to side, resisting his quirk and then maintaining his balance once again. This pissed Izuku off even more, and in a fit of rage, he clawed at Stain's face, barely missing his eyes. As the blood began to spill down from Stain's face, some of his blood landed in his mouth, and Stain fell to the ground at his own paralyzation quirk. Things are not looking good for Stain. And to let you guys know this right now, things are about to get a lot worse. Izuku stands over Stain's body. He then started clawing and scratching at Stain's chest. Blood began to spew everywhere. Some even got on Ida's face as he watched in horror, witnessing the whole thing. After a minute, Izuku stopped, but he was not done with Stain yet, and this is where it's about to get worse. The werewolf then grabbed Stain by the side of his head. Lifting his head up, he then flexed two of his fingers and forcibly places both of his fingers down Stain's throat. While he did this, Stain started choking and gagging, and then blood started spewing from his mouth. But even more than when he originally did it. More and more blood was racing out, and then, in one fell swoop, Izuku then ripped Stain's tongue out of his mouth. Ida was in so much bewilderment of what he just saw that he couldn't even scream for someone to come and help them. He witnessed the absolute carnage and massacre of Stain. Werewolf Izuku then rolled the vigilante over so that he does not choke on his own blood. He then slowly looked over to Ida, still lying there on the ground, scared. Ida wasn't even sure if Stain's quirk had worn off yet or if he was just so scared that he couldn't move. He says, "Izuku, please don't." Werewolf Izuku started walking towards Ida. With each step that he took, the ground would shake and Ida's heart would race even faster. Ida was scared for his life and he thought that he was about to die. But then, Werewolf Izuku just stood there, staring at him, as the light started reflecting in his eyes. From the inside of his head, Izuku heard, "Izuku, stop! He's your friend! Tenya Ida is your friend!" In reality, Izuku said, Ida's lips would quiver, and he would say, "Yes, Izuku, I'm your friend. Friends don't hurt each other." Werewolf Izuku leaned in closer. All Ida could do was focus on his razor sharp teeth. Inside Izuku's head, he hears, "Don't hurt your friend, Izuku." Suddenly, the wolf heard him speak, like Werewolf Izuku actually spoke to Wolf in his head Izuku, saying,
Was like us, this wouldn't happen. If he was like us, he'd be better. If he was like us, he'd be stronger.
Izuku opens his mouth. Ida starts panicking, saying, "No, please don't eat me." Izuku then got closer as he places his teeth on Ida's armor plates, and he starts to bite down. Ida starts screaming for someone to help him. Izuku didn't get through his armor plates, so he bit down harder and harder and
Midoriya!
harder
Midoriya, no!
until he
Midoriya!
successfully
Stop!
breaks
Midoriya!
through Ida's armor, piercing his flesh. Ida screams in agony, even louder. Izuku leaves the bite marks on Ida's armor and his shoulder. He then backs away from Ida, but before he could do anything else, Werewolf Izuku was met with an explosion to the back. When the smoke cleared, it revealed Bakugo and Shoto, who witnessed Izuku bite into Ida. At first they thought it was a Nomu, but then when they saw that it was a werewolf, they instantly knew that it was Izuku. Werewolf Izuku then let out a monstrous scream and he ran off, leaving them all alone. As he went out of sight, they then looked down to Ida, who had passed out from this nightmarish endurement. We then slowly zoom out from above the city, and then fade to black as we hear Izuku howl. We then appear back into the beast's forest. Izuku was just waking up from his slumber of his first night of his transformation. He was laying against a tree. His vision was blurry for a second, and he felt weakness in his legs. Eventually, the boy then got up after hearing his head ringing. And then he looked down and he found himself out of clothing. What happened? He looked down and he saw his hands in a thin layer of blood. Oh my god, who did I hurt? The contacts were working and then they fell out. Oh my god, what happened? Izuku panics for a second, but then his wolf calmed him down. Izuku, it's okay. I just watched you all night. You only hurt Stang. You didn't hurt anyone else. Really? Really. Now, I need you to look around and remember where we are. Izuku does this, and he realizes that he's in the beast's forest. He then says, Mandalay. He stumbles around, making his way to the training camp.
Oh man, that's the end of this part.
Oh man, what could the future hold for Izuku now? Find out in the next episode of part 10 of What If Deku Was a Firewolf. If you made it to the end of this video, consider yourselves #bless and watch out for a full moon. Goodbye.